Hello, my name is Jen Johnson. I am the research director here at the Becker County Museum, and today we're going to talk about the early steamboats of Becker County. The steamboats were brought in by John K. West in the Pelican River Valley when he realized there was something that was needed for tourism to get all the tourists around the lakes area. At first, he started when he built a barge in 1886, and it was 14 by 32 feet, and it had a canopy which was propelled by a stern wheel operated by horsepower. It was used for the first time on Detroit Lake, July 3, 1886. It apparently made a big hit with the summer visitors as a lake excursion boat, for other barges were built and used throughout the season of 1889. However, John K. West wanted more as he saw the potential of the lakes. In the summer of 1888, he organized the Pelican Valley Navigation Company. West was president and George D. Hamilton became treasurer. One of the first steamboats that came to the lakes was called Lady of the Lakes, and she was built in Chicago by Charles W. Willard and arrived in Detroit July 25, 1889. When launched, it was found to draw too much water, so the necessary changes were made on the boat by Mr. Willard. On September 24, 1889, the Lady, which she became known as, made her maiden voyage down into Lake Sally. On the return trip, she towed barges loaded with ties and other types of cargo. After the Lady of the Lakes, the Mayflower became the next steamboat. Lady of the Lakes ended in 1902, and the Mayflower came in at that time and lasted until about 1907. Jim Jeffrey was captain, along with Elbert Johnson, who was the engineer. In 1908, the Mayflower was used between Detroit Dock and Lake Melissa, and then the Dakota was also used. The Water Witch was the next steamboat. The Water Witch was used for the maiden voyage down through Kingsbury Lock to Little Pelican Lake. It was a steamer and had a cabin on it. The trip was made July 8, 1908, and the boat was so long it took a day to go down and a day to come back. The Robert Fulton became the next steamboat. This boat was first used in 1895 to take passengers to Chautauqua. Penn Martin was the captain and Charles Bonnell was the engineer. And for some reason, this boat pushed other things, which several steamboats did. They wouldn't just take passengers through the waters. They would also take soda to places. John K. West actually started the mail system with the Lady of the Lakes. We also had another steamboat called the Shoreham. This boat came after the Mayflower. We do not have a picture of that boat. There was also a steamboat called the Pelican, and this boat also came after the Mayflower. We do not have a picture of that. So we have a boat roster, and it was Lady of the Lakes from 1889 to 1902. Robert Fulton first came in 1895. Then Robert Fulton took a break and came back, but we're not quite sure of those years yet. The Mayflower came in 1902 and lasted for about a decade until 1912. The Water Witch came in 1908 and lasted until about a decade until 1918. The Dakota came in 1908 and lasted until about 1912. Shoreham came in 1912 and lasted until about 1918. Pelican came in 1912 and lasted until about 1918. As you can see, many of these early steamboats ended around 1918. Part of that actually had to do with the roads became better, cars became more common, and people just started to find out that they could get around faster in cars than they could in the steamboats. There are a couple stories that through the research that we found out that I would like to share with you. And one of the stories has to do with Lady of the Lakes. In 1901, on the Lady of the Lakes, the engineer, who was John Dexter at the time, was bending over the side of the boat to look at the exhaust that would become clogged, when he suddenly leaned too far, fell out of the boat, and scared many passengers in the process. However, he was able to come right back up. He climbed, and he didn't want to explain that he had messed up and leaned a little too far forward, so instead he told them that he tried to receive his pocket watch in the water, which has fallen out of his pocket. Another story has to do with John K. West, who took a trip through the Kingsbury Locks. On its first run, he spent the night in the cabin of the Water Witch. When docked on the north shore of Little Pelican Lake, West tried to have a good night's sleep after his busy day and his return trip back, but it was interrupted by a herd of cows. Being curious, the cows made their way towards West's boat and were splashing in the water and making strange noises towards the unfamiliar object. West tried several times to get rid of the cows, but it did not work out in the end. They would for a bit, but would not stay away too long because shortly they would be back to making noises. This was not the only annoyance on the trip. While out shooing away cows, West's cabin would fill with mosquitoes, and upon his return to bed, he would be greeted by their buzzing. His crew had been lucky in the situation while they stayed the whole night near a farmhouse, and they did not have to deal with the cows or the mosquitoes. Oftentimes, people will ask what the fare was to take trips. There were 2 trips that they would be able to take on the steamboats. One trip was from Detroit to Shoreham, and that was 25 cents. And then there was another trip which was to Detroit to Pelican, which was 50 cents. There would also be cottage owners who lived on the lakes and would pay a fee to use the locks and the channels. When John K. West started hauling mail, he was actually paid about $138 every summer, and this started in 1819. During World War II, the scrap metal on the boats at the bottom of Muskrat was stripped from the boats and used in other purposes. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the Works Progress Administration rebuilt Dutton locks, replacing the timber with concreted steel. The project took 11 months to complete. Another tidbit of history is that in 2001, the locks were removed and replaced by rocks to allow for more freely flowing rapids and gave the fish a route more easily to move through. Dutton Locks was considered a bootlegger's haven during Prohibition. This was because there were so many natural hiding spots, and Prohibition ended in 1933 after 13 years. So this, along with many other tidbits of Steamboat and Pelican Valley Navigation Company, is available at the Research Library at the Becker County Museum. Thank you.